Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, directed by Glenn Ficarra and John Requa.
Starring Liz Lemon, Harley Quinn, and Bilbo Baggins.
And this is based on the book called The Taliban Shuffle, Strange Days in Afghanistan, which was written by Kim Barker, and that's the person that Tina Fey plays in this movie. So Eric, what did you think about Whiskey Tango Foxtrot?
I loved it, but I think before we get into positives and negatives about this movie, I have to talk about the marketing with this movie.
Absolutely, go ahead.
The trailers are very deceptive for this movie. You go in, I went in at least, thinking I'm going to get a comedy filled with just sprinkles of drama and genuine character moments, but it's actually the exact opposite. We got a very, very character-driven movie that's almost a second coming-of-age story with little sprinkles of comedy in there.
And it's an interesting story, I think, too. You know, it follows the journalist Kim Barker, who ended up in Afghanistan in 2002 and ended up being there for almost 4 entire years. And this is basically pages from her journal telling us about the things that happened. So for them to turn that basic story into what we got, actually, I think was pretty impressive. So here's some of the positives that I thought about this movie. This movie is extremely well acted. All three main leads in the movie, Margot Robbie and Tina Fey and Martin Freeman, all do a great job. They act their characters out very well, and by the end of the story, like you said, character-driven, you really feel for these characters as you're going throughout it. What was one of the positives you thought about it, Eric?
What I really liked about this movie was that the character Kim Baker, played by Tina Fey, really comes into her own, really towards the climax of the movie. She becomes very determined and very driven. One reason why I became so invested in this movie is one scene in particular where she discusses, in a discussion with Margot Robbie's character, she explains to her that her life was not well together. It was very just by the books, nothing exciting, and she wasn't happy with herself. And she decided to take this chance to go halfway across the world into a third world country to basically help progress her career, so to speak. And I was able to really relate to that because I myself was in a similar situation where I left my home to go halfway across the world to a third world country, in my case being Thailand. And it was from that moment where I went from being fairly invested to incredibly invested.
Another positive, I think, for this movie was the direction. This movie is co-directed, and sometimes that can be a good thing and sometimes a bad thing. But I think in this case, it was very well directed. You got a lot of great shots. The movie moves along very well, and I think the director got exactly what he needed out of his actors in each individual scene. One of the things about this movie that's kind of both a positive and a negative is that, like we said before, this movie is less a comedy and more a drama, but I think those scenes were pretty well doled out throughout the film. It's funny when it needs to be and serious when it needs to be as well, but actually that's kind of one of the flaws of it as well. This movie's a bit scattered throughout. Anything you'd like to say about how scattered the movie is? At least I felt that while we were watching the film.
I thought the first half, it had a trouble blending the tone with the comedy and the drama. But I feel towards the second half of the movie settles in and is consistent throughout. It's really the first half I think is a bit flawed, but the second half I think is flawless.
Yeah, this movie has the opposite problem of most films, where they're chugging right along and you love the first and second act, and then a lot of movies tend to kind of fall apart in the third act. This movie didn't have that problem. This movie had the problem getting going, but once it did, you're right, that second and third act I thought was incredible. And I mean, my jaw was basically dropped when we walked out of the theater, because I was like, man, that movie was way better than I expected it to be. All right, so now we're going to grade the movie, and I'm going to go ahead and give this movie a B+. I think it's a very strong movie. That first half is kind of what brings it down from an A for me, but B+ is my grade. What do you say, Eric?
I'm going with an A. I'm a sucker for character-driven stories, and this one is probably better than one I've seen in a long time. Definitely the best one in 2016, for sure.
Thank you, everybody, for watching another edition of Mass Media Galaxy Movie Reviews. My name is Brandon.
I'm Eric.
Remember to follow us on Twitter. I am @TheyKnowStayDead.
I'm @Eric Braddock.
And remember to subscribe to our channel if you like what we're saying. Comment below. Tell us what you thought of the movie. And we look forward to bringing you movie reviews next weekend.
Take it easy.